Let's do it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Understandable English. Today, I'm continuing my travel series about different trips that I've taken around the world so that you can learn English and learn about the world at the same time. I have already done some other episodes about places in Russia as well as Armenia, so you can check those out on my profile as well. This is part 2 of 3 because it was such a long trip. I went to the southern part of the Ural Mountains, and I stayed in a place called Kosly. This is a tiny town, maybe even a village, you would say. And I did this because I had some acquaintances that I had met on Kamchatka when I was there, and I was visiting them, and they invited me to come to this place where they live. We spent some time hiking along the mountains, and we were on a big lake there, paddle boarding, and we even went and had a nice Russian banya, or sauna, as most people would call them. From there, I moved on to Yekaterinburg, which is an interesting place historically. This is the city where the Tsar and his family during the Soviet Revolution were taken and held and then in the end executed. Now the place where this happened is a church. It's not much of a museum. There's a little bit of information there about it, but other than that, there's not a museum to look at because the main parts of this building were destroyed. There was also the Yeltsin Center, which is a big place in the city. But for me, I'm not a big fan of city tourism, so I didn't spend too much time there. But I can say, as always, that people are wonderful because I had met a person in Chechnya on the side of the street. He was also hitchhiking, and he was from Yekaterinburg. And so when I got there, he was happy to let me stay at his place and to explore the area with me and show me everything he knew, drive me to different places. And so we spent some time together exploring this area. One of those places that we explored was called Ural Mars. It's this old place where they used to mine different things for, if I remember correctly, bricks that were used in fireplaces so that they wouldn't burn. And because of this mining operation, lots of the plants and ecosystem died, and it turned into this very strange, lifeless red area. And so it gets the name of Ural Mars. There was another place that had some industrial problem, and so a lake turned into this strange acid green blue color. And a lot of people call it Ural Bali because the water looks like a tropical sea where you might want to swim. But of course, all the local people know that you shouldn't swim there because it's actually some sort of chemical that's in the water. The last place we visited together was called Karabakh, which some people might call the most polluted place on Earth. This is a city that was absolutely destroyed by some sort of off gases that came from a factory. It's interesting to be there because as you're driving along these mountains, you see a lush green landscape with plants and everything growing. And as you get to the city, you look around and the mountains are now just bare. Not a single little bit of green or growing plants. It's just dead. And for that reason, it looks just like an empty desert. After my time in Yekaterinburg, I took a quick little trip through scenic Chelyabinsk, which of course is not as scenic as you might see. A lot of Russians see this as a meme city. It's very industrial. But I went through just to check it out since I'd heard a lot about it. But as always, it seems on this trip, I was in a rush because I was trying to stay on schedule. So I quickly went through Kurgan and Omsk and got to Novosibirsk, which was a cold and wet destination that was going to prepare me to go south to the Altai Mountains. And the trek that I chose in the Altai Mountains was relatively easy. It was going to the mountain Belukha, which is right on the border with Kazakhstan and China. This is probably the most typical tourist trip for anyone going to nature in Russia. Everyone and their mother who has ever wanted to take a trek has done this trek. This is the very first one that almost anyone will do. With that being said, of course, there were many people, and for that reason, the trails were just covered in mud. And so it was a bit difficult sometimes to walk, but the scenery was still very beautiful, and I really enjoyed the elevation. We were up at about 3,000 meters to 3,200, something like that, And so it was quite higher, much higher than Kamchatka was, and so I was excited to be back high up in the mountains. Again, if you're interested in learning more about my Kamchatka trip, I have a whole video about it, so you can watch it here. We hiked around and then went upwards along the glacier towards Mount Belukha. But this glacier was very dirty. It's the summertime, so it's on the melt cycle. But as the local people who had been there many times had said, it is much smaller and it's continuing to get smaller every year, which is not a great sign for the ecosystems there. We had a lot of rain that day and the next few days as well, and so we had to turn around and change our plans. I feel like a very confident hiker, but of course many people come on this route as their first trip, and so they're not as experienced, and for that reason, we always say in English, safety first, which means that we want to make sure the people who are less experienced are able to stay safe. So I was willing to sacrifice going further for the people who were not as experienced. But it was fun meeting a lot of these people who were out in nature for the first time in this way. I met some people and got to know them quite well. And so upon returning back to the city after our trek, we got to explore the city together, and especially with two of these students who live in Novosibirsk, they were happy to show me their city. It was an interesting place to be, and I will say that it was very different than before our trek. Before our trek, it was cold and rainy. After we got back, it was hot and humid, almost too hot to even bear. But what really surprised me was that in Novosibirsk, there was a very good craft beer scene, which I did not expect. I expected that to be more in Moscow or St. Petersburg, but it was quite a good scene in Novosibirsk. After this, I continued on to Tomsk, which was quite a cute little town. If I'm speaking American English, I would say that it was a student town because there was a single university that has a lot of students, and for that reason, it's a very young city. I really liked the wooden architecture everywhere. It has this old vibe to it, and they continue to keep it looking nice, which I really, really enjoyed. There was also this wonderful, wonderful botanical garden, and I could say that Tomsk was quite a cute little city that definitely seemed pleasant to be in. From there, I visited Krasnoyarsk, which has this park called, I guess, Pillars Park in English, and I really enjoyed it. This place is good for hiking, and then also they have these big rocks that go up, and you can climb these big pillars of rocks. And I really liked this place because it was clean. It was very well taken care of and set up to be very accessible for not only tourists, but also the local people who live nearby. There was kind of a funny coincidence when I was there that I had arrived to Krasnoyarsk in the morning, and I was just sitting in a coffee shop drinking a coffee, relaxing a little bit, and I saw on Instagram that one of my friends, who was actually from Kamchatka, was also in the city that day. And so we decided to meet up, and we went to the Pillars Park together. After this, I went south to the city of Abakan, which is famous with a lot of Russians for having a serial killer who has now been caught, but at a time there was a serial killer who was running around there, and it was famous for that reason. I'm not sure if a lot of the locals there may be happy that I say their city is famous for this, but that's how I knew of it beforehand. This was just a stop for me. I was continuing further south to go to a national park called Ergaki. I was planning a hike with a smaller group, and it was going to be a very difficult, almost sporty-like hike through these unnatural scenes that are just so beautiful that you can't even describe them. The name of the park, Ergaki, in the local language means fingers, or at least that's what they told me. And so it looks like these strange pillars and unnatural rock formations are just popping out of the ground. There are all kinds of strange legends there. For example, there is a hanging rock that sits nearby a mountain that looks like a sleeping man. And they say that when this rock falls down, it's going to be the alarm clock for this sleeping mountain. And this will happen when humans start to treat the earth badly and start to kill the earth. And so this man will wake up when this happens. But this park was beautiful. I think this may have been one of my favorite parts of this entire trip. And it just was covered in these fairy tale-like scenes, these beautiful mountain passes, these serene lakes and waterfalls, this dragon's tooth that we climbed up to see these wonderful views from the top of. And we were cliff diving and jumping into these small ponds and lakes. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful 12 days of hiking. And very challenging, but very worth the challenge. And a fun story from this hike was that at one point we were climbing to the top of a mountain. We were doing a summit, as we say. And we saw some clouds in the distance, but we thought that we should be okay. It didn't seem like they were gathering too much strength, so we climbed anyway. Once we were at the top, we could see the clouds were starting to come in, and so we quickly gathered our things to go down the mountain. But I had a stick, a selfie stick, to take pictures with, and when I opened this metal selfie stick, you could hear the buzz sound because the lightning was getting closer. So we quickly grabbed our things, threw them off the mountain, and went down as fast as we could so we did not get hit by the lightning. Overall, this park, Ergaki, was wonderful. I saw that it was well organized, it was clean, it was well taken care of, and it really reminded me of the national parks in the United States. In the US, I am very proud of my country for the fact that they have these amazing national parks that are open and give great access to beautiful nature, and they're always kept clean and well taken care of. And I would say that this park in Russia was very similar. So that's the end of part 2. Stay tuned for part 3. If you learned something new, feel free to press like, subscribe, and as always, have a wonderful day. Toodles.